The grand hall of Etherian glittered like a jewel, set against the void of space. Light from 3 suns filtered through the crystalline dome, casting prismatic patterns across the assembly floor, where over 200 species had gathered for the interstellar conclave. Ambassador Marna Leon stood at the edge of the human delegation's platform, her expression carefully neutral, despite the churning anxiety in her stomach. 5 years of negotiations had brought humanity no closer to recognition as equals. The conclave will now address the ongoing petition from Earth representatives regarding their protected status, announced the floor moderator, a thin, blue-skinned Zethian, whose voice resonated with artificial amplification. Marna straightened her formal diplomatic attire, charcoal gray with the silver-blue trim that had become the unofficial symbol of human resilience. Behind her, Captain Jax Rowan shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial military uniform. Unlike Marna, who had trained in diplomacy since humanity first encountered the conclave, Jax was a soldier thrust into politics by necessity. His weathered face and the scar across his left cheek spoke of battles fought in defense of human colonies, while politicians debated their right to exist. "We've been through this dance too many times," Jax whispered, his voice barely audible. "They'll smile, nod, then table the discussion for another cycle." "Patience, Captain," Marna murmured, though her own reserves had worn dangerously thin. Dr. Sen's latest reports give us leverage. The mention of Dr. Aru Sen, humanity's foremost expert on quantum technologies, brought a faint smile to Jax's face. While diplomats spoke in measured tones on Etherian, Aru worked tirelessly in the shadows, preparing contingencies that the conclave would find most unsettling. High Chancellor Varric, the imposing representative of the Draconian Alliance, rose from his elevated seat, standing nearly 8 feet tall with scaled skin that shimmered between deep purple and obsidian. Varric commanded the room through presence alone. His species had been among the founding members of the conclave, and their technological prowess was matched only by their conservative approach to galactic development. "Esteemed colleagues," Varric began, his voice a resonant bass that needed no amplification. "For 5 standard cycles, we have entertained the human petition for unrestricted technological advancement rights. For 5 cycles, we have explained the necessity of our protective oversight." Marna felt her jaw tighten. Protective was the conclave's preferred euphemism for what amounted to technological imprisonment. Humanity had been permitted to join the galactic community only after agreeing to strict limitations on their development, particularly in propulsion, energy generation, and artificial intelligence. The justification: humans were too young a species to be trusted with such power. "After careful deliberation," Varric continued, "the High Council has formulated a new resolution regarding Earth and its colonies." A holographic document materialized in the center of the chamber, rotating slowly for all delegates to view. Marna's eyes scanned the text rapidly, and with each line, her diplomatic mask threatened to crack. This wasn't a compromise. It was a tightening of restrictions. The resolution proposed embedding conclave advisors within every major human research facility, with veto power over any technological innovation deemed potentially destabilizing to galactic harmony. Captain Rowan leaned forward, reading over her shoulder. "They want to put a collar on us," he growled, low enough that only Marna could hear. Marna's hand found the small communicator in her pocket, a quantum-encrypted device that connected directly to Dr. Sen's laboratory on the edges of human space. Her fingers traced the outline of what the human delegation had codenamed the Exodus Protocol. 5 years ago, when she'd first arrived on Etherian, such a drastic measure would have been unthinkable. Now, it felt inevitable. "The resolution further proposes a graduated system of technological access," Varric was saying, his reptilian features set in what passed for a benevolent expression among his kind. after demonstrating responsible use of approved technologies for periods of no less than 50 standard cycles. Human institutions may petition for expanded access. 50 cycles, nearly 70 Earth years. Marna did the mental calculation. Most humans alive today would be dead before the first graduation could occur. This wasn't oversight. It was generational subjugation. "The floor recognizes Ambassador Lean of Earth," the moderator announced. Marna stepped forward, her movement activating the platform's elevation system. She rose until she was level with Varric, a symbolic equality that the conclave's architecture permitted, even as its policies denied it. The chamber fell silent, hundreds of alien eyes focusing on the human representative. "High Chancellor, esteemed delegates," Marna began, her voice steady despite the anger building within her. "Humanity appreciates the thorough consideration the Council has given our petition." She paused, allowing the translator systems to convert her words into the 67 primary languages used throughout the chamber. The slight delay gave her a moment to survey the room, to note which delegations seemed sympathetic and which remained coldly indifferent. "For 5 years, we have negotiated in good faith. We have shared our art, our philosophy, our unique perspectives. We have contributed to medical advancements that benefit dozens of species. We have followed every regulation, submitted to every inspection, and demonstrated our commitment to peaceful coexistence." Several delegates nodded, particularly those from younger spacefaring civilizations who had once faced similar restrictions. The Nelvarans, with their crystalline exoskeletons, had been under protection for nearly 2 centuries before gaining full member status. Their representative inclined her glittering form in subtle support. "And yet," Marna continued, her voice taking on an edge that caused several translation systems to recalibrate, "this new resolution does not recognize our contributions or our growth. Instead, it seeks to embed permanent overseers within our most fundamental institutions of learning and innovation. It proposes to extend restrictions, not for years, but for generations." Varric's scales darkened slightly, a sign of irritation among Draconians. "Ambassador Leon," he interjected, "the Council's wisdom in these matters reflects millennia of experience managing technological proliferation. Surely you understand that." "What I understand, High Chancellor," Marna cut in, breaking protocol by interrupting a senior delegate, "is that after 5 years of dialogue, the gap between our positions has widened rather than narrowed. What I understand is that the conclave views humanity not as partners, but as subjects." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Captain Rowan straightened, his military bearing becoming more pronounced as tension filled the room. The human security detail positioned around the delegation platform subtly shifted to heightened alertness. "This is most unfortunate rhetoric." "Ambassador," Varric said, his voice cooler now, "the Conclave has welcomed humanity into the galactic community, despite your species' well-documented history of internal conflict and resource mismanagement. Our oversight is not subjugation, it is mentorship." Marna smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Mentorship implies eventual equality. Chancellor, your resolution ensures we remain perpetual students, never graduates. After careful consideration of the proposed terms, and in light of 5 years of diminishing returns from our diplomatic efforts, I am authorized to present an alternative path forward." Her fingers pressed a sequence on the small control panel embedded in her platform. The central holographic display shifted, the Council's resolution fading away, replaced by a simple document entitled Declaration of Human Technological Sovereignty. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, translation systems struggling to keep pace with the sudden outburst of concern, outrage, and confusion. Varric raised a massive clawed hand, calling for order, but for the first time in Marna's experience, the Conclave's legendary decorum fractured. "This is unprecedented, exclaimed the Kilthari representative, its gelatinous form pulsating with agitation. No protected species has ever— Humanity was never a protected species, Marna stated, her voice cutting through the chaos. We were a restricted species. There is a profound difference. Order slowly returned as Varric's authoritative presence reasserted itself. Ambassador Leon, he said, each word precisely measured. Perhaps you would care to explain the meaning of this declaration. Marna nodded. Her decision made. The moment she'd feared and prepared for had arrived, and with it came a strange sense of relief. No more careful diplomatic phrasing. No more pretending that progress was just around the corner. The declaration is simple. High Chancellor, humanity withdraws from the technological oversight provisions of our admission agreement. Effective immediately, we will pursue our own path of development, guided by our own ethical frameworks and scientific curiosity. The Zethian moderator's skin flushed to a deep indigo, a sign of extreme distress. Ambassador, such a unilateral action violates the fundamental principles of the conclave. There are procedures, protocols, which we have followed diligently for 5 years, Marna replied. The admission agreement included provisions for review and potential amendment after 5 standard cycles. We have reached that milestone, and we are exercising our right to amend our relationship with the conclave. Varric's eyes narrowed to reptilian slits. And if the conclave does not accept this amendment? Captain Rowan stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Marna. Though he spoke rarely in these sessions, his voice carried the weight of humanity's combined military experience. Hundreds of years of both terrible conflict and hard-won peace. Then, High Chancellor, we will respectfully depart. Jax's words were simple, but landed in the chamber, like physical objects. Humanity entered the galactic community voluntarily. We can leave the same way. Varric's laugh, a sound like stones grinding together, echoed through the chamber. Captain Rowan, you speak as though departure is a viable option. The Conclave's member species control all major transit corridors, trading hubs, and resource-rich systems. Earth exists within Conclave space. There is nowhere to go. Marna felt a vibration from the communicator in her pocket, a signal from Dr. Sen. The timing was perfect. We've always been resourceful, Chancellor. Perhaps more so than you realize. She turned to address the entire assembly, taking care to make eye contact with representatives from every major alliance and independent species. Delegates of the Conclave, humanity came to you in peace and with great hope. We still extend that peace to all who wish to engage with us as equals. But we will no longer accept limitations on our potential based on fears of what we might become. The Arcturian representative, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, glided forward. Unlike many of the elder races, the Arcturians had been relatively supportive of human advancement. Ambassador Lien, surely there is room for compromise. The Council's position may seem rigid, but perhaps with further dialogue. 5 years of dialogue has led us here, Marna replied, genuine regret in her voice. She had always appreciated the Arcturians' moderate stance. We remain open to future negotiations as sovereign equals, but we will not continue under a system of perpetual supervision. Varric's patience, never abundant, finally broke. This display of ingratitude is precisely why oversight is necessary. Humanity was granted access to interstellar travel barely a century ago. Without Zethian intervention, you would still be confined to your single, polluted world. The technologies that allow you to stand in this chamber were gifts, not rights. Marna's eyes flashed. Gifts? The Zethian delegation approached Earth because they recognized potential in us. Chancellor, they shared certain technologies because they saw mutual benefit in bringing humanity into the fold. We have never been charity cases. Potential, yes, Varric said dismissively, The same potential a knife has before it becomes a weapon. The chamber fell silent at the Chancellor's words. Even species traditionally aligned with the Draconians seemed uncomfortable with the naked hostility of the comparison. "If that is how the Council views humanity," Marna said softly, "then our decision is even more justified than I realized." She pressed another sequence on her control panel, and the declaration was replaced by a countdown timer. Humanity will begin its withdrawal from Conclave oversight in 24 standard hours. During this time, all human citizens are advised to conclude their business within Conclave primary territories and return to human-controlled space. The Kilthari representative's translucent body pulsed with alarm signals. "You cannot simply. This is not how. The economic disruption alone would—" "I assure you," Captain Rowan interjected. "We have calculated the disruption carefully. Human sectors produce 36% of the rare minerals used in Conclave medical technology, and nearly 40% of the agricultural products consumed in the central systems. We have prepared transition plans for essential services and humanitarian needs." This was partially true. Humanity had indeed calculated the economic impact of their withdrawal, but they had deliberately withheld their contingency plans from the Conclave. Let them worry. Let them wonder just how prepared humanity truly was. Varek stood to his full height, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber. "This is not a negotiating tactic that the Council will tolerate. Ambassador Lien, if humanity proceeds with this reckless course of action, there will be consequences." Marna met his gaze steadily. "We understand that, Chancellor. We hope those consequences do not include military action, as that would benefit no one. But we are prepared for all possibilities." With that, she stepped back from the edge of the platform, signaling that her formal address had concluded. The human delegation began to gather their materials, their movements deliberate and coordinated, evidence of careful planning rather than a spontaneous diplomatic tantrum. The chamber erupted once more, delegates turning to each other in heated discussion. The moderator called repeatedly for order, but the unprecedented nature of humanity's declaration had shattered normal protocols. In the confusion, Marna activated her secure communicator. "Aru, it's time," she said quietly. "Initiate Nexus Veil." Dr. Arusen's voice came through with perfect clarity, despite being transmitted from a research station at the edge of human space. "Understood, Ambassador. Nexus Veil protocols initiated. The library is ready to receive our people." Marna nodded, though Aru couldn't see her. "And the other preparations?" "Proceeding as planned. The Conclave will discover just how dependent they've become on human innovation, though not in the way they might expect." Marna allowed herself a small smile. "Keep me updated. We're leaving Etherian within the hour." As she tucked the communicator away, Captain Rowan leaned close. "They won't let this stand, Marna. Varek is already summoning his military advisors." "Let him," Marna replied. "By the time they formulate a response, we'll be beyond their reach." The human delegation moved as one toward the chamber's exit, their departure as carefully choreographed as their declaration had been. Alien representatives parted before them, some in shock, others in what might have been respect. As they reached the massive doorway, Marna turned for one final look at the glittering assembly chamber, at the civilization humanity had hoped to join as equals. For a moment, regret threatened to overwhelm her resolve. So much potential for cooperation, for mutual growth, all sacrificed on the altar of control. Varek watched her from his elevated position, his ancient eyes unreadable. For a species that had traveled the stars for millennia, perhaps humans were indeed like children, impulsive, unpredictable, dangerous. But Marna knew what the Conclave had forgotten. Children grow up, and humanity had just decided to accelerate that process. She turned away and followed her people out of the chamber, the doors closing behind them with a sound of finality. The exodus had begun. The corridors of the Etherean diplomatic complex bustled with frantic activity as news of humanity's declaration spread. Alien dignitaries and support staff rushed between chambers. Information terminals flickered with urgent communications, and security personnel moved with heightened vigilance. Through this chaos, the human delegation proceeded with remarkable calm. Like the eye of a storm, Captain Jax Rowan walked half a step behind Ambassador Marnaline, his military training evident in his posture and the way his eyes continuously scanned their surroundings. The 4 security officers accompanying them, all veterans of Earth's Unified Defense Force, maintained a protective formation without being overtly threatening. "Ambassador," a melodic voice called from a connecting corridor. "Ambassador Leon, please, a moment." Marna paused, recognizing the harmonics of Nelvaran's speech. She turned to see Delegate Lysithea, her crystalline form catching the light in iridescent patterns. Unlike most conclave species, the Nelvarans had shown consistent sympathy toward humanity's position. "We must keep moving, Ambassador," Jax murmured, his hand resting near the diplomatic stunner at his hip, a weapon technically allowed within the complex but rarely carried by most delegates. "Briefly," Marna agreed, then nodded to Lysithea. "Delegate, we are somewhat pressed for time." The Nelvaran approached, her movement creating a sound like wind chimes. "What you have done in the chamber, it is unprecedented. Some are calling it reckless, even suicidal." "And what do you call it, Lysithea?" Marna asked. The crystalline being's faceted eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. "Inevitable. Perhaps necessary. The conclave has grown rigid in its certainties. But, Ambassador," she lowered her voice, though the translation device at her core maintained its volume. "Chancellor Varric has already issued containment orders. Conclave vessels are moving to secure transit points around human space." Jax tensed beside Marna, but the ambassador's expression remained composed. "We anticipated as much. Thank you for the confirmation." "There is more," Lysithea continued urgently. "The Draconian military attaché has requested emergency activation of the Sentinel Protocol." This was concerning news. The Sentinel Protocol was an ancient conclave defense mechanism designed to isolate and contain species deemed immediately dangerous to galactic stability. It had been invoked only twice in recorded history, once against the now extinct Varathi, when they developed planet-killing weapons, and once against a synthetic intelligence that had broken containment in the Cygnus sector. "The Council would need a supermajority to approve such a measure," Marna said, her mind racing through diplomatic precedents and legal frameworks. "Which they do not currently have," Lysithea confirmed. "But Varric is persuasive, and fear is a powerful motivator. Many of the younger species look to the Draconians for protection. If they believe humanity represents a threat..." Captain Rowan checked the secure timepiece on his wrist. "Ambassador, we have 18 minutes until our transport window." Marna nodded, then reached out to touch Lysithea's crystalline appendage, a gesture of trust among Nelvarans. "Your friendship has been genuine in a chamber often filled with diplomatic facades. Whatever happens next, know that humanity remembers its true allies." The Nelvaran's surface rippled with emotion. "The path you've chosen, you truly believe there is no alternative?" 5 years of alternatives led nowhere," Marna replied. "Sometimes to move forward, one must first step away." With that cryptic statement, she continued down the corridor, her delegation in perfect formation around her. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, their diplomatic credentials still valid despite the drama unfolding in the council chamber. At each checkpoint, Marna noted the changing demeanor of the conclave security forces, from professional courtesy to wary suspicion to barely concealed hostility. "They're receiving updated orders," Jax observed quietly as they cleared the final interior checkpoint. "Soon they'll move to detain us." "We'll be gone before that happens," Marna replied with confidence she didn't entirely feel. She activated her communicator once more. Status report. The voice that responded belonged to Commander Elena Torres, captain of the human diplomatic vessel Solstice. Transport shuttle is prepped and waiting. Ambassador, we're receiving increased communication requests from Conclave Control, but maintaining standard protocols. No physical interference yet. Good. We're approaching the landing pad now. Any word from Earth? Secretary General Okafor has addressed the United Planetary Council. The Exodus Protocol has full approval across all colonies. Dr. Sen reports Nexus Veil is at 70% initialization. Marna exchanged a significant look with Captain Rowan. 70% was ahead of schedule. Aru must have begun the process before the council session, anticipating the outcome. The scientist's foresight might make all the difference in the hours ahead. The delegation reached the final security barrier, separating the diplomatic complex from the external landing pads. Here, they encountered their first real obstacle, a contingent of Zethian security officers blocking the passage, their ceremonial staffs now revealing their dual purpose as energy weapons. Ambassador Lien, the security chief said, his blue skin darkening to almost purple with tension. I must request that you and your delegation return to the diplomatic quarters, pending further discussion of your declaration. Marna stepped forward, maintaining a respectful distance but yielding no ground. Chief Security Officer, our diplomatic credentials remain valid for the next 23 standard hours. As per our own declaration, we have broken no conclave laws and retain freedom of movement under Article 7 of the Diplomatic Charter. The Zethian's compound eyes flickered in what might have been uncertainty. Like many security personnel throughout the galaxy, he was more comfortable with clear protocols than unprecedented diplomatic situations. Nevertheless, Ambassador, I have received instructions. From whom? Marna interrupted sharply. The Council has not yet voted on any response to our declaration. Has Chancellor Varric taken executive authority without proper procedure? This calculated question struck at the heart of conclave politics. While Varric wielded enormous influence, the conclave operated on principles of collective governance. Security forces answered to the Council as a whole, not to individual members, even high-ranking ones. The security chief hesitated, his staff wavering slightly. The instructions came through official channels. Then, you can provide the Council authorization code? Captain Rowan asked. His tone making it clear he knew no such code existed. The standoff lasted several tense seconds before the security chief's communicator chimed. He listened to whatever message came through, his expression shifting from uncertainty to resignation. You may proceed to your vessel, Ambassador, he said finally, motioning his officers to stand aside. But be advised that Conclave space traffic controllers are implementing special protocols for departing ships. Marna inclined her head in acknowledgement but said nothing more as they passed through the checkpoint. Once they were out of earshot, Jax leaned closer. Special protocols? Delay tactics, Marna explained. They'll cite safety concerns, equipment malfunctions, traffic congestion, anything to keep us grounded until the Council decides how to respond. They emerged onto the external landing pad, a massive platform extending from the diplomatic tower. The Etherean sky burned with the light of 3 suns in different stages of their daily transit, casting multiple shadows across the smooth surface. In the distance, the sprawling megalopolis of the conclave capital stretched to the horizon, its architecture a testament to the collaboration of hundreds of species over thousands of years. The human shuttle waited at the designated bay, its sleek design a blend of Earth aesthetics and adapted conclave technology. Commander Torres stood at the base of the boarding ramp, her uniform impeccable, her expression revealing nothing of the historic gravity of the moment. Ambassador Captain, she greeted them with a crisp salute. We're ready when you are. Any interference from traffic control? Jax asked, as the delegation moved quickly toward the shuttle. They're suggesting we delay departure due to unusual spatial disturbances in the primary transit lanes, Torres replied, her tone making it clear what she thought of this excuse. I've acknowledged their concern while reminding them of our diplomatic right to departure priority. Marna smiled grimly. The dance had begun. Technical delays and procedural obstacles, rather than outright refusal. The conclave preferred to maintain the appearance of law, even when effectively obstructing it. As the delegation boarded the shuttle, Marna paused for one last look at Etherian. The gleaming capital had been her home for 5 years. Years of hope gradually giving way to frustration and, finally, resolve. Part of her mourned what might have been. Humanity integrated into the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known, contributing their unique perspective to a tapestry of diverse intelligence. But that dream had died by inches in committee rooms and closed-door sessions, suffocated by fear disguised as caution. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said softly to Jax, who had stopped beside her. "All this achievement, all this history, and still, they couldn't see beyond their preconceptions." "Maybe that's what happens when you live for millennia," Jax replied. "You start believing your own myths about how things should be." Marna nodded and turned away from the view. "Let's make history of our own, then." They boarded the shuttle, and the ramp retracted behind them with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing the delegation's equipment and preparing for departure. Commander Torres took her place at the control interface, her hands dancing across the haptic displays. "Etherian Control, this is Human Diplomatic Shuttle Hemingway, requesting immediate clearance for departure to carrier vessel Solstice," she transmitted, following standard protocol despite knowing what the response would be. The reply came after a deliberate delay. "Shuttle Hemingway, we're currently experiencing system calibration issues with Departure Corridor 7. Please stand by for technical resolution. Estimated delay, 2 standard hours." Torres glanced at Marna, who had taken her seat in the command section. The ambassador nodded once. "Etherian Control, we acknowledge your technical difficulties," Torres responded. "However, under Diplomatic Charter Section 12, Paragraph 3, we are exercising our right to self-navigation in cases of priority diplomatic transit. We will depart using onboard navigation systems." The silence that followed was telling. Self-navigation within Conclave Central Systems was technically permitted, but almost never practiced. The integrated traffic management system had been designed for optimal efficiency and safety, and, not coincidentally, for perfect oversight of all vessel movements. "Shuttle Hemingway," the controller finally replied, their tone noticeably cooler. "Self-navigation is strongly discouraged due to current spatial conditions. We cannot guarantee your safety if you proceed." Captain Rowan leaned forward. "They're stalling until they can get Council approval for more direct intervention." Marna activated her personal communicator once more. "Dr. Sen, we need a distraction. Something to occupy Etherian Control's attention for approximately 5 minutes." "I thought you might—" Aru's voice came back, sounding almost cheerful. "Initiating pattern disruption in 3, 2, 1. Across the vast Etherian spaceport, warning signals suddenly blared. Hundreds of information terminals flickered, their displays momentarily replaced by what appeared to be random code sequences before returning to normal. The pattern repeated, creating a cascade of technical glitches throughout the system. "Commander Torres," Marna said calmly, "I believe now would be an excellent time to depart." Torres grinned. "Yes, Ambassador." Her hands moved across the controls, and the shuttle's engines engaged with a low hum that quickly built to a powerful thrum. "All stations secure," reported the flight engineer. "Artificial gravity stabilized. Departure vector plotted." The shuttle lifted smoothly from the landing pad, accelerating upward through Etherian's thin atmosphere. Below them, the spaceport's organized patterns of arrival and departure had dissolved into confusion as controllers dealt with the mysterious system fluctuations. "Etherian Control is hailing us, Commander," the communications officer reported. They sound rather insistent. "Acknowledge receipt of transmission, but indicate communication difficulty," Torres ordered. "Standard evasion pattern once we clear the atmosphere." The shuttle broke through the upper atmospheric boundary, the blue-green sky giving way to the star-filled blackness of space. Ahead, the massive form of the Solstice waited in high orbit, a vessel classified as a diplomatic carrier, but built with defensive capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what the Conclave had permitted. "We have company," Jax noted, pointing to the tactical display where several Conclave security vessels had broken from their patrol routes and were moving to intercept. "Time to rendezvous with Solstice?" Marna asked. 3 minutes at current acceleration," Torres replied. "Conclave vessels will intercept in approximately 4 minutes." Marna nodded, unsurprised. "Dr. Sen, we need Phase 2. "Executing now," came the immediate response. "And Ambassador, Nexus Veil has reached 92% initialization. We're ahead of schedule." Throughout the Etherian orbital control sector, a second, more severe wave of disruptions began. Navigation beacons transmitted contradictory signals. Communication relays cycled through frequencies at random intervals. Automated defense platforms momentarily went offline before emergency systems restored basic functionality. On the tactical display, the intercepting Conclave vessels slowed, then scattered in apparent confusion as their coordination systems failed. The pathway to the Solstice suddenly lay clear. "Impressive," Jax muttered. "Our ruse been busy." 5 years of preparation," Marna replied quietly. 5 years of building backdoors while appearing to comply with restrictions. The shuttle accelerated toward the waiting carrier, the distance closing rapidly. Around them, Etherian's orbital infrastructure continued to suffer mysterious malfunctions. Nothing dangerous or permanent, but more than sufficient to create confusion and delay response. "Approaching docking position," Torres announced. "Solstice has extended shields to cover our approach." The shuttle slipped into the carrier's massive docking bay, magnetic clamps securing it as the bay doors closed behind them. Decompression protocols completed in half the standard time, another modification that slightly exceeded Conclave regulations. As the delegation disembarked into the Solstice, Captain Elena Torres greeted them formally. "Ambassador, welcome aboard. All human diplomatic personnel have been recovered from Etherian. We are ready to execute the Exodus Protocol on your command." Marna took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had just taken its first irreversible step away from the galactic community that had simultaneously welcomed and constrained them. "Captain Rowan, please join me on the bridge," she said. "It's time to show the Conclave exactly what they've been trying to control." As they made their way through the carrier's corridors, crew members nodded respectfully or saluted. Everyone aboard understood the historic significance of this day and the risks they were taking. If the Exodus failed, if the Conclave managed to reassert control, careers would be the least of what they'd lose. The Bridge of the Solstice represented the pinnacle of permitted human technology, a seamless integration of adapted Conclave systems and Earth innovations that had been carefully designed to appear less advanced than they actually were. Captain Torres took her command position at the center, while Marna and Jax moved to the diplomatic observation stations. "Status report," Torres ordered. "Conclave vessels regrouping," reported the tactical officer. 17 ships forming a blockade between us and the transit corridor, receiving multiple demands to power down and prepare for boarding. "Communications from Etherian?" Marna asked. "Chancellor Varric himself," the communications officer replied with a hint of dark amusement. "He's requesting to speak with you directly, Ambassador." Marna straightened her diplomatic attire. "On screen, please." The central display activated, revealing Varric's imposing form. Behind him, the council chamber appeared to be in disarray, with delegates arguing and aides rushing between stations. Ambassador Lien, Varric began, his voice vibrating with barely controlled rage. Your actions constitute a direct violation of Conclave security protocols. The disruptions to Etherian systems are being treated as a hostile act. An interesting interpretation, Chancellor, Marna replied coolly. We've simply exercised our right to departure while experiencing unfortunate communication difficulties. If Etherian systems are experiencing problems, perhaps the Conclave should examine the vulnerabilities in their network architecture. Varric's scales darkened to midnight black, a sign of extreme anger among Draconians. You play word games while committing what amounts to technological sabotage. This behavior only confirms the Council's position that humanity cannot be trusted with advanced systems. A convenient circular argument. Chancellor, when we follow your rules, we're children who need guidance. When we demonstrate capability beyond your expectations, we're dangerous and untrustworthy. Marna leaned forward slightly. Perhaps the truth is simpler. You fear what you cannot control. You have nowhere to go, Ambassador, Varric said, his voice lowering to a threatening rumble. Every transit corridor, every jump point from here to Earth is monitored by Conclave forces. Return to Etherian now, and we may yet find a diplomatic resolution to this misunderstanding. Captain Torres moved into view of the communication pickup. Chancellor Varric, this is Captain Elena Torres of the Solstice. I must inform you that we have no intention of returning to Etherian or submitting to Conclave boarding parties. Any attempt to forcibly enter this vessel will be treated as an act of aggression against a diplomatic carrier, in violation of the Centauri Conventions. Varric's expression shifted to one of cold calculation. Captain, your diplomatic status is predicated on adherence to Conclave protocols. The moment Ambassador Lien declared human withdrawal from oversight provisions, she placed your vessel in a legally ambiguous position. An interesting interpretation, Marna echoed her earlier words. But ultimately irrelevant, Chancellor. This conversation serves no further purpose. Humanity has made its decision. She nodded to the communications officer, who terminated the connection. The bridge fell silent for a moment, the enormity of what they were doing settling over everyone present. They're not bluffing about the blockade, Jax said, studying the tactical display. Every recognized transit point is covered, and they're moving reinforcements into position around Earth and the major colonies. Marna smiled. Fortunately, we don't need their transit points anymore. She activated her secure communicator one final time. Dr. Sen, status of Nexus Veil? 100% initialized, Ambassador, came the triumphant reply. The library awaits. Transmit activation codes to all human vessels, Marna ordered. It's time for code exodus. Throughout human space, from Earth to the furthest colony, vessels of all sizes had been quietly prepared for this moment. Merchant ships, research vessels, military patrols, and civilian transports all received the same encrypted signal. Within those vessels, technology that had been carefully hidden from Conclave inspectors for years activated in perfect synchronization. On the Solstice's bridge, Captain Torres entered a series of commands into her station. A new display appeared, showing a pattern of energy that existed just beyond normal space-time. The quantum framework that Dr. Aru Sen had named the Nexus Veil. All systems aligned, Torres confirmed. Veil interface stable. We can transition on your command. Ambassador. Marna looked at Captain Rowan, who nodded his support. This was the point of no return, the moment humanity would either secure its freedom or face the consequences of its defiance. Execute transition, Marna ordered, her voice steady despite the thundering of her heart. Transition in 5. Torres began the countdown. 4, 3, 2, 1. Reality seemed to shimmer around the solstice, light bending in impossible ways as the vessel engaged with the quantum framework of the Nexus Veil. For a brief, disorienting moment, the ship existed in two states simultaneously, both within normal space and somewhere else entirely. Then, with a flash of energy that momentarily blinded conclave sensors, the solstice vanished. Across human space, hundreds of vessels performed the same impossible maneuver, disappearing from conclave monitoring systems in perfect unison. The exodus had begun in earnest, and humanity had just revealed their greatest secret, a method of faster-than-light travel that operated outside the conclave's carefully controlled transit network. In the Etherian Council chamber, Chancellor Varric stared in disbelief at the sensor readings. For the first time in his long life, the ancient Draconian experienced something he had thought himself immune to: genuine fear. In the void between conventional transit lanes, the human fleet materialized like ghosts emerging from fog. The Nexus Veil, that quantum framework existing adjacent to normal space-time, had allowed them to slip past the conclave blockade as if it didn't exist. On the bridge of the solstice, the transition completed with barely a tremor, a testament to Dr. Sen's meticulous engineering. "Transition complete," Captain Torres announced, the professional calm of her voice belied by the triumphant gleam in her eyes. "All systems nominal. No pursuit detected." The tactical display showed empty space around them. No conclave vessels, no monitoring stations, nothing but the stars and the distant glow of a nebula, marking the edge of what humans had nicknamed the Silent Corridor. A vast region, largely ignored by conclave mapping expeditions, due to its apparent lack of resource-rich systems. "Position?" Marna asked, still recovering from the strange sensation of veil transition. Despite extensive briefings on the technology, experiencing it firsthand was disorienting. "Exactly where we intended to be," Torres replied. "Coordinates match Dr. Sen's calculations precisely. We're approximately 70 light-years from Etherian, in unmonitored space." Captain Rowan let out a low whistle. 70 light-years in an instant. No wonder the Conclave kept a leash on us. "Fleet status?" Marna asked, pushing aside her wonder to focus on the immediate situation. The communications officer worked rapidly at her station. "Receiving confirmation signals from all major vessels. Ambassador, 98% successful transition rate. The remaining 2% report minor navigational drift, but no critical issues." Marna allowed herself a moment of relief. Nearly 1,000 human ships had just executed a maneuver that the Conclave considered theoretically impossible. The scale of the deception they had maintained for years was staggering, a testament to human determination and Dr. Sen's genius. "Open a secure channel to Earth Command and patch in Dr. Sen," she ordered. The main view screen shifted, splitting to show both Secretary General Okafor from Earth Command and Dr. Aru Sen from his research facility at the edge of human space, now effectively the center of their new territory. Aru's dark features were alight with barely contained excitement. Unlike the diplomats and military personnel who had spent years in the political trenches of the Conclave, the scientist had focused entirely on creating the technological miracle that had just liberated humanity. His slightly disheveled appearance, lab coat wrinkled, hair escaping its usual neat arrangement, suggested he had been working non-stop for days. "It worked perfectly," he exclaimed, before anyone else could speak. "The veil transition exceeded even our best simulations. Energy consumption was 12% below projected levels, and spatial coordination maintained 99.7% accuracy across the fleet." Secretary General Okafor, a statuesque woman whose silver-streaked hair and composed demeanor projected calm authority, allowed a small smile at the scientist's enthusiasm. "Dr. Sen, your achievement has secured humanity's future. The Unified Planetary Council extends its deepest gratitude." Aru nodded, accepting the praise with uncharacteristic solemnity. "The Nexus Veil isn't my achievement alone, Madam Secretary. It represents the work of thousands of scientists operating in secret for nearly a decade, A secret kept from the most sophisticated monitoring network in known space, Marna added. That may be the most impressive feat of all. Okafor's expression grew more serious. Ambassador Lien, Captain Rowan, your execution of the diplomatic end of Exodus was equally remarkable. The Conclave is in unprecedented disarray, according to our remaining observation posts. Which brings me to our next challenge, their response. They're still trying to process what happened, Jack said. Conclave doctrine doesn't account for a protected species simply disappearing. Not just disappearing, Dr. Sen corrected with a hint of mischief. The secondary protocols have activated precisely as designed. Conclave systems throughout the galaxy are experiencing difficulties. On cue, the tactical officer reported. We're receiving automated distress signals from Conclave outposts across 3 sectors. Their communication networks, navigation systems, and power distribution grids are experiencing cascading failures. Marna raised an eyebrow. Doctor, just how extensive are these difficulties? Aru's expression was a mixture of pride and something close to embarrassment. Remember those compliance updates we installed in our infrastructure to meet Conclave technical standards? They contain dormant subroutines designed to activate upon code exodus. For 5 years, every piece of human technology integrated into Conclave systems has been a potential access point. You turned their oversight against them, Jax realized, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. Precisely, Aru confirmed. Their insistence on monitoring our systems created a two-way street they never anticipated. Every inspection, every compatibility upgrade they mandated, became an opportunity to embed our own monitoring and control mechanisms. Secretary General Okafor's expression remained carefully neutral. To be clear, Dr. Sen, these disruptions are temporary and non-destructive, correct? We are not at war with the Conclave, merely asserting our independence. Absolutely, Madam Secretary, Aru assured her. The protocols are designed to create confusion and administrative paralysis, not permanent damage. Critical life support systems remain untouched. This is a demonstration, not an attack. Marna considered the implications. How long will these effects last? The disruptions will gradually diminish over approximately 72 hours, Aru explained. By then, we'll be fully established in our new territory, and the Conclave will have received our message. Humanity is neither helpless nor technologically dependent. Captain Torres approached Marna with a data tablet. Ambassador, we're receiving the first transmissions from the Black Library. Dr. Sen's team has successfully activated the central hub. Marna accepted the tablet, scanning the information with growing satisfaction. The Black Library, humanity's greatest secret, hidden even from most of their own people until now, represented the culmination of years of clandestine research and development. A massive space station constructed in sections and assembled in the silent corridor. It housed laboratories, manufacturing facilities, and data repositories containing technological innovations deemed too advanced for Conclave approval. Dr. Sen, Marna said, looking up from the tablet. Your team has performed miracles. Is the library ready to receive the fleet? The central hub and primary facilities are fully operational, Aru confirmed. Residential sections are still being finalized, but we can accommodate essential personnel immediately. The manufacturing centers are already producing veil generators for installation at key defensive positions throughout our new territory. Secretary General Okafor nodded. Then we proceed as planned. Ambassador Lien, you will coordinate diplomatic response from the Solstice. Captain Rowan, your military expertise will be needed to establish our defensive perimeter. Dr. Sen will continue overseeing technological implementation from the library. And what of our message to the Conclave? Marna asked. They'll recover from the disruptions eventually, and we should be prepared for their response. A formal communication has been prepared, Okafor replied. It reiterates our desire for peaceful relations while making our position absolutely clear. Humanity will develop according to its own principles, not under conclave restrictions. We are open to trade, cultural exchange, and diplomatic relations, but as equals, not subjects. Jax frowned. They won't accept that easily. 5,000 years of being the undisputed power in the galaxy creates certain expectations. Perhaps, Marna acknowledged. But we've already shattered their most basic expectation, that we would remain safely contained within their system of control. That alone will force a reassessment. The tactical display suddenly updated, showing a single vessel approaching from the direction of conclave space. It was small, moving cautiously, and broadcasting on a frequency used exclusively by Nelvaran Diplomatic Corps. It appears we have our first visitor, Torres noted. Nelvaran Registry, requesting communication. Marna exchanged glances with Secretary General Okafor, who nodded. Let's see what they have to say. The screen shifted again, revealing the crystalline form of Delegate Lysithea. Her surface reflected light in patterns that suggested agitation or excitement, the Nelvaran equivalent of speaking breathlessly. Ambassador Lien, she began without preamble. The conclave is in chaos. The council chamber has become a battlefield of accusations and demands. Chancellor Varric is calling for immediate military action. But no one can agree on what action to take against an enemy they cannot find. Marna maintained her diplomatic composure, despite the surge of satisfaction she felt. We are not enemies. Delegate Lysithea, humanity has simply chosen a different path forward. A path that has revealed capabilities far beyond what anyone believed you possessed, Lysithea observed. The Nexus Veil technology. It violates fundamental principles of space-time navigation, as understood by conclave science. Not violated, Dr. Sen interjected. Transcended. The conclave's understanding of quantum mechanics has been stagnant for centuries. They stopped looking for alternatives once they established their transit network. The Nelvaran's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been the equivalent of a thoughtful nod. The Nelvarans suspected as much. Our own researchers have proposed similar theories, though we lacked the motivation to pursue them as vigorously as humanity has. Motivation is powerful, Marna said. 5 years of patronizing oversight provided ample supplies of it. I have come with a purpose beyond sharing news, Lysithea continued. The Nelvaran Collective wishes to establish direct diplomatic relations with humanity outside the conclave framework. We believe others will follow. The Arcturians, the Meridian Alliance, perhaps even the Kilthari once their initial outrage subsides. This was unexpected and encouraging. Marna had hoped that some of the more progressive conclave members might eventually seek independent relations, but not this quickly. We welcome diplomatic exchange with the Nelvaran Collective. Secretary General Okafor stated formally, arrangements can be made for secure communications and, when appropriate, direct meetings. There is more, Lysithea added, her voice modulating to a more serious tone. Chancellor Varric has called for implementation of the Isolation Directive. Those systems previously under human control within conclave space are to be quarantined and stripped of all technology that might contain, what was the term? Subversive elements. Marna's expression hardened. Those systems contain millions of human civilians who chose not to participate in the exodus. They remain under the protection of Earth's diplomatic agreements. Agreements you have just violated, according to the Chancellor's interpretation. Lysithea pointed out. I do not support this action, but you should know what is being planned. Captain Rowan stepped forward. The Isolation Directive would constitute an act of war against civilian populations. Surely the Council cannot approve such a measure. The Council is fracturing along ideological lines, Lysithea replied. The older species, Draconians, Zethians, Kilthari, advocate for containment at any cost. Younger members are more cautious, recognizing that humanity has demonstrated technological capabilities that make direct confrontation inadvisable. Secretary General Okafor's expression remained composed, but her voice took on an edge of steel. Please convey to those members of the Council who will listen. Any action against human civilians within Conclave space will be met with an immediate and proportional response. We have withdrawn peacefully, but we are prepared to defend our people. The Nelvaran's crystalline surface rippled with concern. I will convey your message, Secretary General, but please understand, the Conclave has never faced a situation like this. Their systems are failing, their authority is questioned, and a species they considered safely managed has revealed itself to be technologically superior in key areas. Fear is driving their decisions now, not reason. Fear has always driven their policies toward humanity, Marna observed. The difference is that now they have cause to fear, whereas before it was mere speculation about what we might become. Lysathea seemed to consider this. Perhaps there is wisdom in that observation. I must return before my absence is noted. The collective will establish secure channels for ongoing communication. Safe journey, Delegate, Marna said formally. And thank you for your courage in reaching out. The Nelvaran's image faded from the screen, leaving the human leaders to consider this new information. They're going to target the stragglers, Jax said immediately. Civilians who stayed behind, research outposts we couldn't evacuate in time, commercial interests too integrated with Conclave economies to extract. Secretary General Okafor nodded grimly. We anticipated this possibility. Contingency protocols are already active in human settlements throughout Conclave territory. Emergency evacuation procedures will commence immediately, using smaller Veil-capable vessels deployed before the main exodus. And those who can't be evacuated? Marna asked, thinking of the millions of humans who had built lives within the Conclave system, who had married into alien cultures, established businesses, or simply preferred life in the diverse central worlds. We've established underground networks, Okafor explained. Sympathetic species, black market operators, and others who exist in the gaps of Conclave oversight. They'll help protect our people until more permanent arrangements can be made. Dr. Sen cleared his throat. The Nexus Veil technology can be modified for smaller applications, emergency extraction of specific individuals or groups. It's not ideal for widespread evacuation, but for high-risk cases. Prioritize development, Okafor instructed. Captain Rowan, coordinate with Dr. Sen's team to identify critical extraction targets. Jax nodded. Already compiling the list, Madam Secretary. Marna felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The adrenaline of the declaration, the escape, and the transition was fading, leaving her acutely aware of how much still needed to be done, and how many lives depended on their next moves. Ambassador, Torres said softly, noting her fatigue. The fleet is entering formation around the Black Library. We're scheduled to dock within the hour. Perhaps you should rest before we arrive. Marna straightened, pushing aside her weariness. There will be time for rest when our people are secure. Captain. She turned back to the view screen. Madam Secretary, with your permission, I'd like to address the fleet, all vessels that participated in the Exodus. They deserve to know what we've accomplished today, and what challenges still lie ahead. Okafor nodded. Approved, Ambassador. They've earned that much and more. As the communications officer prepared a fleet-wide broadcast, Marna gathered her thoughts. The words she spoke now would be remembered in human history, either as the beginning of a new era of independence or as the prelude to a catastrophic confrontation with the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. This is Ambassador Marna Leon to all vessels of the human fleet, she began, her voice steady and clear. Today, we have taken an unprecedented step in our history. After 5 years of negotiations that led nowhere, 5 years of being treated as children rather than equals, humanity has chosen to forge its own path among the stars. She paused, letting the magnitude of their achievement sink in. The Nexus Veil technology, developed in secret by our finest minds, has freed us from dependence on conclave transit systems. The Black Library, built beyond their sight, will serve as the foundation for our independent development. But make no mistake, the path ahead will not be easy. On view screens throughout the fleet, crews watched and listened as the woman who had faced down the conclave outlined their future. The conclave will recover from the disruptions we've caused. They will reassess, regroup, and respond. Some will seek dialogue. Others will demand retribution. Our immediate priority must be securing our new territory and protecting those of our people who remain within conclave space. Marna's expression softened slightly. We did not choose this separation lightly. Many of us built relationships, partnerships, even friendships with members of other species. We learned from their ancient wisdom and contributed our unique perspectives to their understanding of the universe. That exchange of ideas need not end with our political separation. Her voice took on greater strength as she continued. To those in the conclave who would treat us as enemies, we have no desire for conflict. We have demonstrated our capabilities not as a threat, but as proof that humanity deserves to determine its own destiny. We withdraw in peace, but we will defend our freedom if necessary. Captain Rowan nodded in approval as Marna concluded her address. To every human who participated in the Exodus, today marks not an ending, but a beginning. Together, we will build a society where innovation is not feared, but celebrated, where diversity of thought is our greatest strength, and where we extend the hand of friendship to all who wish to engage with us as equals. The stars are no longer our destination. They are our home. As the transmission ended, a spontaneous cheer erupted across the Solstice's bridge. Similar celebrations echoed throughout the fleet, as the tension of years of planning and months of preparation finally found release in this moment of triumph. Inspiring words, Ambassador. Secretary General Okafor commented. They will need that inspiration in the days ahead. As will we all, Marna replied, her diplomatic mask slipping just enough to reveal the weight of responsibility she carried. The easy part is over. Now, we build something worthy of the risk we've taken. The Solstice approached the massive structure of the Black Library, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules, research facilities, habitation sections, and defense installations. Officially, it didn't exist. In reality, it represented humanity's greatest achievement, a self-sufficient center of learning and development beyond the reach of conclave oversight. As they drew closer, Marna felt a sense of wonder replacing her fatigue. This was what humanity could accomplish when freed from artificial constraints, a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and vision. Docking procedures initiated, Torres announced. Welcome to your new home, Ambassador. Marna Lean, the diplomat who had just changed the course of human history, watched as the Black Library grew larger in the view screen. Whatever came next, reconciliation or confrontation, peace or conflict, humanity would face it on their own terms. The Exodus was complete. The next chapter had begun. 2 years after the Exodus, the galactic landscape had transformed in ways few could have predicted. On the command deck of the Black Library, now expanded to nearly twice its original size, Marna Lien stood before a holographic display of known space. Territory once uniformly coded in the blue of conclave control now showed distinct regions. The diminished but still vast conclave core in blue, the rapidly expanding human territory in green, and, most surprisingly, a patchwork of independent alliances and neutral zones in various colors, marking the fragmentation of what had once been the galaxy's most unified political entity. The Meridian Compact has formally requested technological exchange, reported Jax Rowan, now Admiral of the Human Defense Fleet. The promotion had come 6 months after the Exodus, when it became clear that military leadership would be as crucial as diplomatic skill in securing humanity's new position. Specifically, they're interested in adapted versions of the Nexus Veil technology. Marna studied the highlighted region representing the Meridian Compact, a coalition of 12 formerly minor conclave species who had declared limited independence in the wake of humanity's departure. Their security protocols? She asked. Vetted by our intelligence division, Jax confirmed. They've purged conclave monitoring systems from their key facilities and implemented our encryption standards. The risk of technology transfer to the Draconians or Zethians is minimal. Recommended response? Limited exchange, Jax suggested. Navigation algorithms for regional transit, not the full interstellar capability. They're not ready for that level of independence yet. Their defense systems couldn't handle the attention it would bring. Marna nodded, appreciating his caution. In the 2 years since the Exodus, humanity had become selective about sharing their technological advances, not from a desire to control others as the Conclave had done, but from hard-earned recognition that technology without adequate protection could become a liability rather than an asset. Approved. Arrange a secure meeting with their representatives at Outpost Horizon. She manipulated the holographic display, zooming out to show the broader galactic picture. Status of the Conclave quarantine zone? Jax's expression darkened. Still enforced along major transit routes, but increasingly porous at the margins. Our infiltration teams report at least 60 successful extractions in the past month. Humans who remained behind after the Exodus and now face increasing restrictions. The treatment of humans who had stayed within Conclave territory remained one of the most painful consequences of the separation. What had begun as enhanced monitoring had gradually evolved into outright discrimination, restricted movement, confiscation of property, and in some regions, internment in security facilities. And Varick's position? Unchanged, Jax replied grimly. The latest Conclave broadcast still refers to humanity as dangerous technological deviants, who must be contained to preserve galactic stability. But his influence is waning. More moderate voices are gaining traction, particularly among the younger species. This aligned with reports from their intelligence network. Chancellor Varick had maintained his leadership position through the crisis, but his hardline approach had alienated many who saw the futility of trying to contain a species that had already demonstrated its ability to circumvent Conclave control. A soft chime announced another arrival to the command deck. Dr. Aru Sen entered, his usual disheveled appearance somewhat moderated by the formal attire required for his new position as director of the Advanced Sciences Division. 2 years of working beyond Conclave restrictions had transformed him from a brilliant but cautious researcher into a bold technological visionary. Ambassador, Admiral, he greeted them, his eyes immediately drawn to the holographic display. Reviewing the territorial shifts again? They're accelerating. You know. Our predictive models suggest another major realignment within 6 months. The Arcturian decision? Marna asked. Aru nodded enthusiastically. Precisely. If they formalize their separation from Conclave technological oversight, at least 7 other species will follow their example. The domino effect we anticipated is gaining momentum. And our New Light project? Jax inquired. The frontier colonies are asking when they can expect implementation. The New Light project represented humanity's most ambitious post-Exodus initiative, a revolutionary approach to energy generation that made planetary settlements completely self-sufficient without harmful environmental impact. It was exactly the kind of technology the Conclave would have restricted, claiming it was too advanced for a young species. Final testing is complete, Aru confirmed with evident pride. The first production units are already being dispatched to Artemis Colony. Within a year, Every human settlement will have unlimited clean energy. Marna allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was what they had fought for: the freedom to develop technologies that improved human lives without arbitrary restrictions. "We're receiving a priority transmission," announced the communications officer. "Nelvaran diplomatic frequency. Security protocol Obsidian." "Put it through," Marna ordered. The holographic display shifted, replacing the galactic map with the crystalline form of Ambassador Lysithea. In the 2 years since her clandestine visit following the Exodus, the Nelvaran had become humanity's most important ally within the fragmenting conclave. Her crystalline structure now contained subtle blue patterns, a sign of elevated status within her species' hierarchy. "Ambassador Lien," Lysithea began without preamble, "I bring urgent news. The Draconian fleet has mobilized. 17 battle groups have departed their home system, moving toward the quarantine boundary." Jax immediately stepped closer to the display. "Heading in formation?" "Attack configuration, according to our analysis," Lysithea replied. "Their trajectory suggests they intend to secure the Cygnus Transit Hub, the nexus point closest to your territory." Marna and Jax exchanged concerned glances. The Cygnus Hub was strategically vital, a natural confluence of space-time that facilitated faster conventional travel, while humanity's Nexus Veil technology made them independent of such transit points. Controlling the hub would give the Draconians a staging area uncomfortably close to human space. "Chancellor Varric claims this is merely a training exercise," Lysithea continued, the patterns within her crystalline form shifting in ways that suggested skepticism. "But the Nelvaran Collective has intelligence suggesting otherwise. The Draconian Military Council met in closed session 3 days ago. No records of their discussion exist, but immediately afterward, resource allocation to their weapons production facilities increased by 300%. "They're finally making their move," Jax said quietly. "After 2 years of posturing and propaganda, the timing is significant," Lysithea added. "The Conclave General Assembly convenes in 20 days. Varric likely wants a show of strength before the moderates can formalize their proposals for diplomatic re-engagement with humanity." Marna considered the implications. "Or he hopes to provoke a response that will justify further military action. What does the Nelvaran Collective recommend?" "Caution, Ambassador. While we believe the Draconian force is primarily intended for intimidation rather than direct confrontation, Varric is unpredictable. His position within the Conclave has weakened, and desperate leaders sometimes take desperate actions to reassert control." "Thank you for the warning, Ambassador Lysithea," Marna replied formally. "Humanity values the Collective's friendship in these uncertain times." The Nelvaran's surface rippled in what had become recognizable as her equivalent of a smile. "Not merely friendship, Ambassador Lien. The Collective has formally approved the mutual defense treaty we discussed. We stand with humanity, should the Draconians attempt aggression." This was significant news, the first formal military alliance between humans and a former Conclave species. The Nelvarans had maintained diplomatic relations since the Exodus, but military cooperation represented a major escalation in their relationship. "The treaty honors us," Marna said, inclining her head in the gesture of deep respect the Nelvarans valued. "We will uphold our commitments to the Collective with equal resolve." After exchanging a few more details about the Draconian movements, the transmission ended. The command deck fell silent as the implications settled over the leadership team. "Well," Aru said finally, breaking the tension, "it seems Chancellor Varric hasn't learned the fundamental lesson of the Exodus. Attempting to intimidate humanity tends to produce results opposite to those intended." Jax turned to a secondary display, bringing up the current disposition of the human defense fleet. "We have 3 battle groups within rapid response range of the Cygnus Hub. I recommend moving them to heightened alert status, but keeping them within our territory. No provocative actions." Marna nodded her agreement. And activate the Sentinel network around the hub approach vectors. If the Draconians enter the buffer zone, I want to know their exact capabilities and intentions. The Sentinel network, autonomous observation platforms utilizing scaled-down Nexus Veil technology to remain undetectable, had become humanity's early warning system. Unlike the Conclave's bulky monitoring stations, the Sentinels could observe without being observed, another innovation that would have been restricted under the old regime. There's something else we should consider, Aru suggested, his expression thoughtful. The Cygnus hub itself. What about it? Jax asked. Its strategic value derives from its natural space-time characteristics, a convergence point that facilitates faster travel using conventional drive systems. Aru explained. But with some modifications to our veil projectors? Understanding dawned on Marna's face. You're suggesting we could disrupt those natural characteristics? Aru smiled. Temporarily and selectively. We could generate a localized phase variance that would make the hub unusable for Draconian vessels, while allowing our allies to continue normal operations. That's significantly more subtle than a direct military response, Jax admitted, studying the scientist with newfound respect. Could it be implemented without detection? The equipment would need to be positioned precisely, Aru said, already calculating. But yes, a series of microprojectors deployed through the veil could establish the variance matrix without conventional ships ever approaching the hub. Marna considered the proposal. It offered a way to neutralize the Draconian threat without direct confrontation. Exactly the kind of asymmetric approach that had served humanity well since the Exodus. Proceed with preparations, she decided, but hold on actual deployment until we see how the Draconian fleet positions itself. We respond to aggression. We don't initiate it. Jax nodded his agreement. I'll coordinate with Admiral Chen's task force to prepare contingencies if the situation escalates beyond the hub. One more thing, Marna added. Inform Secretary General Okafor. If we're facing potential military action, the Unified Planetary Council should be briefed. As her colleagues departed to implement these decisions, Marna returned her attention to the holographic display, now showing the probable course of the Draconian fleet. 2 years of careful diplomacy, technological development, and strategic positioning had brought humanity to this point. Respected by some, feared by others, but no longer dismissed or controlled. The irony wasn't lost on her. Chancellor Varric had feared human technological advancement precisely because he believed it would lead to conflict. By attempting to prevent that imagined future, he had created the conditions that now made confrontation increasingly likely. Her thoughts were interrupted by a priority alert from the communications center. Ambassador, we're receiving an automated distress signal from Outpost Epsilon. Their communications array has gone offline, and their secondary systems are reporting massive power fluctuations. Outpost Epsilon, one of the forward research stations established after the Exodus, specializing in deep space observation. It was remote even by the standards of human territory, positioned to monitor a region of space where several unexplained phenomena had been detected. Deploy a rapid response vessel through the veil, she ordered. Full scientific and security complement. Yes, Ambassador. Estimated arrival time, 12 minutes. 12 minutes to reach a station at the edge of charted space. Another miracle made possible by the technology the Conclave had feared. Marna made a mental note to personally review the findings once the response team assessed the situation. Outpost Epsilon's research was classified even within the human hierarchy, part of a project Dr. Sen had cryptically named Horizon Contingency. Hours later, as the command deck operated at reduced capacity during the night cycle, Marna sat alone reviewing reports from across human territory. The Exodus had created not just political and technological challenges, but logistical ones as well. Supporting a population spread across dozens of worlds without the established conclave infrastructure required constant innovation and adaptation. The door slid open, and Admiral Rowan entered, his expression grave. "The response team has reported from Epsilon. You need to see this." He handed her a secure data tablet. As she reviewed the information, her eyes widened. "This is confirmed?" "Triple verified," Jax confirmed. "Dr. Sen is already on his way to the station via priority transport." Marna set down the tablet, her mind racing with implications. "Does the Conclave know?" "Not yet, but given the scale of the phenomenon, they'll detect it soon enough." "And its relationship to the Draconians' movement toward the Cygnus hub?" Jax shook his head. "Unknown. The timing could be coincidental, or someone else is moving pieces on the board." Marna finished the thought. She rose from her seat. Decision made. "Recall our diplomatic team from the Meridian negotiations. Inform the Nelvaron Collective that we have urgent information to share under the terms of our new treaty. And prepare my ship. I need to see Epsilon for myself." "Is that wise, given the draconian activity?" Jax asked, concern evident in his voice. "This changes everything, Admiral," Marna replied, gesturing to the report. "The game we've been playing, conclave politics, territorial positioning, technological leverage, it may all be rendered irrelevant by what they've discovered." As she gathered her materials, Marna felt a strange mixture of dread and exhilaration. 2 years ago, humanity had shocked the galaxy by revealing capabilities beyond what the Conclave believed possible. Now, it seemed, the universe had a surprise of its own to deliver. The journey to Outpost Epsilon via the Nexus Veil took less than an hour, a distance that would have required weeks using Conclave-approved propulsion systems. Marna's diplomatic vessel, the Artemis, materialized near the research station with barely a ripple in the fabric of spacetime. The refinements Dr. Sen's team had made to the Veil technology over the past 2 years had eliminated much of the disorientation early transitions had caused. "Approach vector established," reported the Artemis's pilot. "Outpost Epsilon has cleared us for immediate docking." Through the view screen, Marna could see the distinctive architecture of the research outpost, a central hub surrounded by specialized modules arranged in a spiraling pattern. Unlike the utilitarian designs favored by the Conclave, human installations embraced both function and form, incorporating aesthetic elements that reflected Earth's diverse cultures. Epsilon's sweeping curves and precise geometric patterns showed clear influence from both Arabic mathematics and Japanese minimalism. What caught her attention, however, was not the station itself, but what lay beyond it. At first glance, it appeared to be simply a section of darker space, a region where stars were somehow less visible. But as she studied it, Marna realized that the darkness had structure, subtle patterns that seemed to shift even as she attempted to focus on them. "Magnification," she ordered, and the view screen obliged, zooming in on the anomaly. "We've been calling it the Shadow," came a familiar voice from behind her. Dr. Aru Sen had entered the bridge unannounced, his attention completely focused on the phenomenon displayed on the screen. Though that hardly does it justice. "You arrived quickly," Marna observed, turning to face the scientist. "Some things warrant breaking a few speed records," Aru replied with a distracted smile. "This is one of them." The Artemis completed its docking procedures, and Marna followed Aru through the connection tube into Outpost Epsilon. They were met by the station's director, Dr. Alara Voss, a quantum physicist whose brilliant work on interdimensional mathematics had been consistently rejected by conclave scientific journals before the Exodus. "Ambassador Lien, Dr. Sen," she greeted them, her usual formality strained by evident excitement. "Thank you for coming so quickly. The phenomenon has evolved since our initial report." "Evolved how?" Aru asked sharply, as they walked briskly toward the main observation deck. "Increased density, expanded boundaries, and, most significantly, It's begun emitting structured radiation patterns. Alara led them into a large circular chamber, where a three-dimensional holographic display showed real-time data flowing from dozens of sensors focused on the anomaly. At first, we thought they were random fluctuations, but there's clear evidence of mathematical sequencing. Marna studied the streams of data, recognizing enough of the patterns to understand the implications. It's communicating. Or trying to, Aru confirmed, already immersed in the readouts. These are prime number sequences, mathematical constants, basic geometric principles, the universal language of intelligence trying to establish contact. How long has this been occurring? Marna asked. The anomaly first appeared approximately 72 hours ago, Alara explained. The communication attempts began 14 hours later. We followed first contact protocols, passive observation, no direct response, while attempting to understand what we're dealing with. And what are we dealing with? Marna pressed. Alara and Aru exchanged a look that Marna had come to recognize. Scientists with a theory too radical to state without qualification. Based on our analysis, Alara began carefully. The shadow appears to be a dimensional intersection, a place where another reality is bleeding into our own. A natural phenomenon? Marna asked, though she suspected the answer. No, Aru said firmly. The mathematical precision is too perfect. The timing too convenient. This was created, Ambassador, deliberately. By whom? That's the question, isn't it? Aru manipulated the holographic display, highlighting certain patterns in the data stream. These sequences contain embedded structures that don't match any known mathematical system. Not human, not conclave, not any species we've encountered. A new player, Marna murmured, the strategic implications already forming in her mind. One that's chosen this moment to reveal itself. Or was drawn by our activities, Alara suggested. The Nexus Veil technology manipulates fundamental quantum fields in ways the galaxy hasn't seen before. It's possible we've been noticed. The implications sent a chill through Marna. Humanity had freed itself from conclave oversight, only to potentially attract the attention of something far more advanced and unknown. Have you attempted communication? She asked. Not yet, Alara replied. First contact protocols dictate authorization from civilian leadership before active engagement with unknown intelligence. Marna nodded, appreciating the scientist's adherence to protocol, even in the face of such a momentous discovery. And your recommendation? Respond, Aru said without hesitation. Whatever created this knows we're here, knows we're observing. Silence at this point could be interpreted as hostility or fear. Or prudence, Marna countered, her diplomatic instincts activating. We know nothing about their intentions or capabilities. We know they're mathematically sophisticated, Alara pointed out. Advanced enough to create a stable dimensional intersection. And they've chosen a method of communication based on universal principles, rather than imposing their own language. That suggests an approach designed to minimize misunderstanding. Marna considered this, weighing the potential risks against the opportunity. Throughout human history, first contact scenarios had ranged from beneficial exchange to catastrophic misunderstanding. The Conclave's arrival on Earth had fallen somewhere in between, offering technological advancement, but with strings attached that humanity had only recently severed. Limited response, she decided. Mathematical acknowledgement only. No cultural information, no details about our capabilities or positioning. Aru nodded, already beginning to formulate the response sequence. Simple but elegant. I like it. And inform Admiral Rowan, Marna added. Have him divert a defense group to establish position at a safe distance. Not close enough to appear threatening, but available if needed. As Aru and Alara worked on the response, Marna stepped aside to make a secure communication to Secretary General Okafor. This development transcended normal diplomatic authority. It potentially affected the future of the entire species. "Madam Secretary," she began, once the quantum encrypted channel was established. "We have a situation at Outpost Epsilon that requires your direct attention." Okafor's expression remained composed as Marna outlined the discovery, but the slight tension around her eyes revealed her understanding of the stakes. "Your assessment, Ambassador. We're dealing with a deliberate contact attempt by an unknown intelligence with technology significantly advanced beyond our own," Marna stated plainly. "The timing, coinciding with increased draconian military activity, may be coincidental or may suggest awareness of our political situation." "And you recommend response rather than continued observation?" "Yes, Madam Secretary. Controlled, limited response. We establish the basis for communication without revealing strategic information." Okafor was silent for a moment, weighing the options. "The Unified Planetary Council will need to be informed, but that will take time. You have my provisional authorization to proceed with the limited response. Keep me updated on any developments, regardless of the hour." "Understood, Madam Secretary." The communication ended, and Marna returned to the observation deck where Aru and Alara had completed the response sequence, an elegant mathematical proof that acknowledged receipt of the initial communication while establishing a framework for more complex exchange. "Ready for transmission," Alara announced. Marna took a deep breath, acutely aware that she was about to take humanity across another threshold. "Proceed." The response was transmitted toward the shadow using a focused quantum beam, technology developed after the Exodus that allowed for communication without conventional electromagnetic signals that might be intercepted or disrupted. For several minutes, nothing happened. The anomaly continued its subtle shifting patterns, showing no acknowledgement of their message. The scientists exchanged concerned glances, running diagnostics to confirm the transmission had been properly executed. Then, with startling abruptness, the shadow changed. What had been vague, shifting darkness suddenly developed structure, geometric patterns of increasing complexity that folded and unfolded in four-dimensional space. The sensor arrays around the observation deck came alive with new data streams as the phenomenon began emitting radiation across multiple spectrums simultaneously. "It's responding," Aru whispered, his usual scientific detachment momentarily overcome by wonder. "And not just repeating. It's building on our response, extending the mathematical dialogue exponentially." Alara's hands moved rapidly across the control interface, directing the sensors to capture every nuance of the evolving patterns. "The information density is increasing by orders of magnitude. This isn't just communication, it's education." Marna watched as the holographic display struggled to represent the complexity of what they were receiving. "Education in what?" "Everything," Aru replied, his voice filled with awe. "Spatial physics, quantum mechanics, dimensional theory. They're showing us foundational principles we've only begun to theorize about." The observation deck door slid open, and Admiral Jax Rowan entered, his expression grim. "Ambassador, we have a situation." Marna turned, immediately recognizing the tension in his posture. "The Draconians?" "3 battle groups have accelerated toward our position. They've detected the anomaly and appear to be operating under the assumption that it's a human weapon or experiment." "That's absurd," Alara protested. "The energy signatures are completely unlike anything in our technological framework." "The Draconians aren't interested in subtle distinctions at the moment," Jax replied. "Chancellor Varric has issued a statement claiming that humanity has violated the dimensional integrity of the galaxy and poses an existential threat to all civilized species." Marna closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this new complication. "How long until they're in weapons range?" "At their current velocity, approximately 12 hours. Our defense group has moved to intercept, but they're outnumbered. We need to send a clear message to the conclave, Marna decided. This phenomenon is not of human origin, and our scientists are simply studying it, as any responsible species would. I've already dispatched communication buoys to neutral territories with that explanation, Jax confirmed. But Varric seems determined to use this as the pretext he's been waiting for. The moderate factions in the conclave are being pressured to support military action in the name of galactic security. Marna turned back to the shadow, which continued its hypnotic display of complex patterns. And our mysterious new contact? Any indication of its response to potential conflict in its vicinity? Nothing yet, Aru reported. But the communication continues to increase in complexity. There's something else emerging now, not just scientific principles, but what appears to be historical narrative. Historical narrative? Marna moved closer to the display. They're telling us their story? I believe so, Alara confirmed. The mathematical framework is being used to convey temporal sequences, causal relationships, evolutionary patterns, the mathematics of history. In essence, Jax studied the shifting patterns with military precision. Can we use this communication channel to warn them about the approaching draconian forces? If this entity has the technology to create dimensional intersections, they might have defensive capabilities as well. It's worth attempting, Aru agreed. We've established mathematical common ground. We should be able to convey concepts of approach, potential conflict, and defensive positioning. Marna considered the implications. Involving an unknown entity in a potential military confrontation carried significant risks. But allowing the Draconians to attack a potentially peaceful contact attempt might be even more dangerous. Proceed with caution, she instructed. Frame it as information sharing, not a request for intervention. We need to understand their intentions before we inadvertently draw them into our conflicts. As Aru and Alara worked on formulating this more complex communication, Marna took Jax aside. What's the status of the Nexus Veil disruptors for the Cygnus hub? Ready for deployment, he confirmed. But given the Draconians' current trajectory, they've bypassed the hub entirely. They're coming directly for Epsilon, which means they consider this anomaly a greater threat, or opportunity, than territorial positioning. Marna's diplomatic mind raced through the implications. Or Varric believes this is his moment to decisively demonstrate conclave authority over humanity. Either way, we need to prepare for direct confrontation, Jax said grimly. I've ordered the activation of our defensive grid throughout the sector, but I recommend evacuation of non-essential personnel from Epsilon. Marna nodded her agreement. Begin preparations, but hold on execution. I want to see how our next communication with the Shadow is received before we start moving people. On the observation deck, Aru and Alara had completed their message, a mathematical representation of approaching objects, potential energy discharges, and positional data intended to inform without alarming. Transmission ready, Alara announced. Proceed, Marna authorized. The message streamed toward the Shadow, its complex mathematical structure designed to build on the communication framework they'd already established. This time, the response came almost immediately. The geometric patterns within the anomaly shifted dramatically, forming configurations that pulsed with what appeared to be urgency. They understood, Aru said, studying the incoming data. And they're concerned? The pattern structure has elements we've identified as representing temporal causality, with negative outcome variables. They're warning us, Alara translated. Something about the approaching Draconian fleet is triggering a response beyond what our message conveyed. Before they could analyze further, the sensor arrays erupted with new alerts. The Shadow was changing again, but this time not just in its patterns. The dimensional intersection itself was expanding, growing from its initial contained state to a swirling vortex of dark energy that extended tendrils outward like a living entity. Ambassador, The station's security chief called over the communication system. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the station. All systems are experiencing power surges. Evacuation protocols, Marna ordered immediately. Get everyone to the emergency shuttles and prepare for immediate departure. Jax was already coordinating with the defense vessels positioned nearby. Defense Group Theta, move to extraction positions. Prepare to cover evacuation vessels. The observation deck's lighting flickered as power surged through the station's systems. Through the viewport, Marna could see the shadow continuing to expand, its tendrils now extending several kilometers from the original anomaly. We need to go, Jax urged, taking Marna's arm. Now! But Marna hesitated, her attention caught by a new pattern forming within the shadow, a complex geometric structure that somehow seemed familiar despite its alien nature. Wait, she said, pulling away from Jax. Aru, do you see that? That configuration. It resembles Nexus Veil transition mathematics. Aru stared at the pattern, his eyes widening in recognition. It's not just similar. It's an extension of the same principles. They're showing us a more advanced implementation of our own technology. Why now? Alara asked, even as she hurriedly downloaded critical data to portable storage units. Why show us this as we're evacuating? The answer came as the station's sensors detected new energy signatures at the edge of the system, the leading elements of the draconian battle groups, arriving ahead of schedule. They've accelerated, Jax reported grimly. We have minutes, not hours. Marna made a split-second decision. Complete the downloads and get to the Artemis. We're taking this data with us. As they raced through the corridors of the now shuddering station, emergency klaxons wailed and crew members rushed toward evacuation points. The shadow's expansion had begun affecting the station's structural integrity, creating gravitational fluctuations that made movement increasingly difficult. They reached the docking bay, just as the first energy discharges from distant draconian vessels illuminated space around the station. Defense Group Theta had moved to intercept, engaging the leading elements of the enemy fleet to buy time for the evacuation. All essential personnel accounted for, reported the Artemis's first officer as they boarded. Evacuation shuttles away from docking bays 2 through 7. We're the last vessel remaining. Disengage and prepare for immediate veil transition, Marna ordered as they secured themselves in the command section. The Artemis detached from the failing station, its engines engaging at maximum thrust to create distance before the veil transition. Through the view screen, they could see the shadow continuing to expand, now encompassing the entire research station in its swirling darkness. Incoming fire, warned the tactical officer. Draconian cruisers targeting our position. Evasive maneuvers, Jax commanded. Prepare point defense systems. But before the draconian weapons could reach them, something extraordinary happened. The shadow extended a massive tendril directly toward the approaching enemy fleet. Where it touched the lead vessels, space itself seemed to warp and distort. The draconian ships didn't explode or disintegrate. They simply ceased to exist in normal space, vanishing as if they had never been there. What in the name of... Jax breathed, watching as ship after ship disappeared before the weapons they had launched could even reach their targets. It's protecting us, Alara whispered. Or at least, it's removing what it perceives as a threat. The remaining draconian vessels broke formation, attempting to retreat from the expanding phenomenon. But the shadow moved with impossible speed, tendrils of dark energy extending to engulf ship after ship. Within minutes, the entire attacking force had vanished. Veil transition coordinates locked. The Artemis's navigator reported, ready to execute on your command. Marna stared at the viewport, watching as the shadow now began to contract, pulling back from the space it had expanded to fill. As it receded, it left behind no trace of the draconian fleet or outpost Epsilon, only empty space where once there had been matter and energy. Execute transition, she ordered quietly. The Artemis disappeared into the Nexus Veil, leaving behind a mystery that would reshape humanity's understanding of their place in the universe. As the ship traveled through the quantum framework that Dr. Sen had pioneered, Marna couldn't help but wonder if what they had just witnessed was merely an advanced version of their own technology, if the shadow represented not an alien presence, but a potential future for humanity itself. Hours later, in the secure conference room aboard the Black Library, Marna presented the data from Outpost Epsilon to an emergency session of humanity's leadership. Secretary General Okafor, Admiral Rowan, Dr. Sen, and representatives from the major human colonies listened in stunned silence as she recounted the encounter with the Shadow and its apparent intervention against the Draconian fleet. The data packets retrieved by Dr. Voss contain information that will take our scientists years to fully analyze, Marna concluded. But the initial assessment suggests that what we witnessed was not merely first contact with an unknown intelligence, but potential contact with a future version of intelligence itself, perhaps even a future version of humanity. That's speculation, cautioned Okafor, always the pragmatist. We should be careful about anthropomorphizing something so fundamentally alien. The mathematical structures were built upon principles identical to those underpinning the Nexus Veil, Aru countered, but implemented with a sophistication that makes our version look primitive by comparison. The probability of convergent evolution producing identical mathematical frameworks is vanishingly small. Whether it was future humanity or another intelligence entirely, Jax interjected. The fact remains that it intervened directly against Conclave forces. The political implications are enormous. Indeed they were. Reports were already flooding in from across the galaxy. The Conclave was in unprecedented crisis. The disappearance of 3 Draconian battle groups, including Chancellor Varick's flagship, had created a power vacuum at the highest levels of leadership. Moderate factions were moving quickly to assert control, calling for immediate cessation of all military activities against human territory. The Nelvaran Collective has reached out, Marna reported. They're proposing an emergency summit between human representatives, moderates from the Conclave, and independent species. The destruction of the Draconian fleet has fundamentally altered the balance of power. And the Shadow? Asked one of the colonial representatives. Has there been any further activity? None, Aru confirmed. The dimensional intersection has completely receded. Our long-range sensors detect nothing unusual in the region where Outpost Epsilon once stood. Secretary General Okafor stood, her commanding presence drawing all eyes. We find ourselves at another pivotal moment in human history. 2 years ago, we chose independence over subjugation, freedom to develop over restricted potential. Now we face an even greater decision: how to use the knowledge and opportunity this encounter has provided. She looked around the table, meeting each person's gaze. We could leverage this event militarily, use the fear it has generated to demand concessions from the Conclave. We could hoard the mathematical insights for our exclusive advancement. Or we could approach this as an opportunity for genuine cooperation, sharing what we've learned while maintaining our independence. Marna understood the weight of this decision. Humanity had fought for the right to determine its own path, to develop without arbitrary restrictions. But true advancement came not just from technological capability, but from wisdom in how that capability was applied. The Shadow showed us more than advanced mathematics, she said carefully. Its response to the Draconian attack was precisely targeted, removing the threat without collateral damage. It communicated before acting. It shared knowledge freely. Whatever intelligence created that phenomenon, it demonstrated principles we would do well to emulate. Around the table, heads nodded in thoughtful agreement. The experience of conclave restriction had taught humanity the value of freedom. Perhaps this new encounter was meant to teach the value of responsibility that came with that freedom. I propose we accept the Nelvaran invitation, Marna continued. But we approach the summit not as victors demanding terms, but as partners offering a new vision for galactic cooperation, one based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. And the mathematical knowledge from the shadow? Aru asked. Some of it could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. We share the foundational principles, Marna suggested. The scientific insights that benefit all species. Strategic applications can remain our own until we've established true trust. Secretary General Okafor considered this approach. A middle path, then. Neither conquest nor capitulation, but calculated cooperation. She nodded slowly. Prepare a diplomatic framework. Ambassador Leon. Humanity will extend its hand to the galaxy, but from a position of strength and principle. As the meeting concluded, and the leadership dispersed to their various responsibilities, Marna remained in the conference room, studying the holographic representation of the shadow's mathematical patterns. Something about them spoke to her on a level beyond intellectual understanding, a sense of connection to possibilities that stretched beyond current comprehension. Admiral Rowan found her there, lost in contemplation. Credit for your thoughts, Ambassador? Marna smiled slightly. I was thinking about fear, Jax. The Conclave feared what humanity might become, so they tried to contain us. Their fear created exactly the outcome they were trying to prevent. And now the galaxy fears us, Jax observed. After the Shadow's intervention, many species will assume we have access to power we don't actually possess. Yet, Marna added, power we don't possess yet. The mathematics the Shadow shared, it's like they were giving us a roadmap, showing us not just what's possible but how to achieve it. Jax studied the swirling patterns thoughtfully. Do you think it was truly from the future? Some version of humanity that has transcended current limitations? I don't know, Marna admitted. But I believe it was intentional, not just the contact, but the timing. As if something or someone wanted to interrupt the cycle of fear and control that has dominated galactic politics for millennia. By giving us power that others will fear even more, Jax sounded skeptical. That seems counterproductive. Or by giving us responsibility to match our freedom, Marna countered. The Exodus gave us independence. Perhaps this encounter is meant to shape how we use that independence, to challenge us to be better than those who tried to control us. The holographic patterns continued their hypnotic dance, mathematical principles unfolding in 4 dimensions. Within them lay the potential for humanity's next great leap forward, not just in technology, but in understanding. Whatever comes next, Marna said softly, the galaxy will never be the same. The talks have failed. Humanity has left. And now even the Conclave must face a future they cannot control. Jax nodded, his military pragmatism tempered by newfound philosophical consideration. So we become the example they couldn't be. Powerful but principled. Advanced but accessible. That's the hope, Marna agreed. That's the challenge the Shadow has set before us. As if in response to her words, the holographic patterns briefly intensified, forming a structure of perfect symmetry before returning to their flowing state. A coincidence of programming, perhaps, or something more. In a universe where dimensional intersections could appear at precisely the moment they were needed. Marna was becoming less certain about the nature of coincidence. One thing was clear. Humanity's journey had only just begun. They had freed themselves from one set of limitations, only to discover horizons far beyond what they had imagined. The galaxy had begun to fear them. Yes, but perhaps that fear would give way to something more profound as humanity charted its new course among the stars. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as pioneers of a new understanding, one that transcended the old paradigms of control and restriction to embrace the limitless potential that had always been their birthright. The Shadow had shown them a glimpse of what might be. Now it was humanity's task to make that vision real, one step at a time, with freedom and responsibility walking hand in hand into an uncertain but boundless future.